Hi, Roy. Thanks so much for joining us today on this Friday afternoon for the CX Reflex. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks, Amanda. How are you?
Good. So as you know, this is a series that we're doing. We're calling it the CX Reflex, and it's kind of a thing where we're sitting down to discuss trends with friends is the way I've been thinking of it. So I've got a couple questions for you. I think a lot of companies believe that the customer experience that they're delivering is great, is superior. It's something that they would tout their brand for. But when you go and ask their customers, how would you rate that experience? It's often not as good, not ranked as high as the company believes that it is. So how do you explain that disconnect, that perception reality gap between what businesses feel they're delivering and what customers are experiencing? And how do you suggest folks fix that?
First, organizations, companies have to look very closely at what they're measuring. For example, if you're asking more than one question on your customer survey about the person who delivered the service to you, if you contact someone and their contact center agent is awesome. If you're asking more than one question about that, you're doing it wrong. And let me explain why I think that is. What you're doing is generating a bias in the survey results. If I contacted you because my delivery failed or something else went really wrong, but the person who delivered the service to me was great, then I'm going to be reluctant to give a low rating, even though my overall experience was terrible. So that's one way we generate this bias in the questions that we ask, in the survey methods that we use, and using the right metrics really helps you. So Net Promoter Score is very, very popular, right? It's better than customer satisfaction in many cases, but not all. Customer effort score is, for me, very closely aligned with experience. How hard was it for me to do business with you? If you ask it that broadly, how hard was it to get your issue addressed, et cetera, et cetera. You can ask both the Net Promoter question and the customer effort question on a survey. That's two questions. That's fine. Allow for free text and make sure that that free text gets looked at either by a human or by some analytics tool. Get that text to tell you what the customer is feeling at the time, what their major concerns are. Give them an opportunity to talk. Don't just make them click a button or a happy face or a frowny face. Those happy face, frowny faces are great. Keep it short and easy for the customer, but give them an opportunity to speak. Another thing is, be honest with yourself. If service and experience aren't top priorities for your organizations, why should you be getting high ratings? Right? I think a lot of organizations are afraid to ask that question. Why would people rate us so highly if we don't have these big priorities? And third, and maybe most important, remember, it's not the rating that counts. It's the relationship that matters. Ratings are mileposts as you approach the goal of delivering great customer experience. They're not goals in themselves. Hey, we've got an NPS of 80. Well, that's great. It's an indicator that people are rating you highly for whatever reason, but that's not the goal. We need to get 80 on our NPS. That's not the goal. The goal is to deliver great experience, which will result in a high NPS, right? If you do it right.
Absolutely. So you brought up you touched on something interesting in there, which was why a question that companies should ask themselves: why should we be expecting high ratings when we're not, putting our all into our customer experience strategy? So you bring me to my next question, which is how I think traditionally, historically, for better or worse, contact centers, service support centers are looked at as an expenditure. They're an expense. They're a cost center for the business. How do you recommend, in order to get that investment, which is connected to the higher Net Promoter Score and just an overall better ratings and experience for customers, how do you advise folks to change the mindset of the organization to view the contact center as a profit center?
I think that first of all, and I've always felt that the whole idea of having your service end as a cost center is problematic to begin with. So is your sales force, right? It
Right.
costs you money to have these people doing what they do. If they produce results, great. And the same is true for service. If they're producing the results that you want, great. But what you need to have happen is that you need to get more than buy-in on your initiatives for customer experience. You need to get commitment. And there's the old story of the farmer, carrying a chicken or carrying 2 eggs to the house. And the guy says, "Where are you going?" He says, "Oh, I'm going to go make breakfast." And he says, "Oh, well, what do you got there? You got the eggs." He says, "So what was involved in that?" He says, "Well, the chicken was involved. And if he had bacon on the side of the plate, the pig was committed." Right? Chicken involved, pig committed. So how do you get that kind of commitment from the upper level of your organization? The first thing is you need to have a compelling story to tell. So make sure that you have that compelling story to tell and you back it up with those metrics we were just talking about. If you're able to say, customers told us this is how we responded, this is how our scores reflected that change. Okay, now you've got a story you can tell. And if you find can address some like-minded folks in the C-suite that are listening to what you have to say, so you got to have the numbers and you've got to have the story and have the numbers tell the story, then you can start to get that commitment. Once you start to get that commitment, then the idea of customer experience starts to flow down through the organization. If you don't get that commitment, you got a problem. If you only get buy-in, that's just somebody saying, "Okay, go do that." And that kind of approach doesn't work very well because now you're pushing it off on somebody else when it is the senior level responsibility to start. It's going to be our strategy to deliver great customer experience. That's our mission, our goal, and our strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've talked about telling a story, and I think that's huge. I mean, not just I'm biased, I'm a marketer, so I love storytelling. But so as folks are telling that story and trying to get that commitment, they'll meet some resistance, right? Like you have to anticipate for that resistance. You're always going to have a blocker, somebody that's a little bit maybe what's the word I'm looking for? Dubious, right? So especially because the terms that we're using, omnichannel, customer experience, CX, they're very loaded kind of corporate buzzwords that get thrown around all the time. How do you recommend, once you've got your story, you've got all your data points, you've collected your feedback from customers, and you know what you need to fix, how do you recommend people actually make customer experience improvement a strategic discipline across the organization? Because what you're talking about impacts multiple departments, right? So how do you make it a practice? How do you make it a discipline?
And that's exactly why this has to come from the top, because you're talking about the whole organization, right? So what you do is I would put it this way. What is the first question your senior managers ask? And when you propose a new initiative, when you come up with something, when you throw an idea out on the table, what's the first question they ask? And if it isn't, how does this affect our customers? Then you've got a gap. Okay. That should be the first question. What happens to the customer if we do this? How will this make the customer's life better if we do this? So that should be the response. And so that is changing the mindset. And changing the mindset means that, again, we go back to telling the story. And part of that story is to say, look what happened to our customer experience and our bottom line and our market share when we did this. We changed the color of our website from blue to purple, and people absolutely loved it. And look at how things changed. So it's using the feedback that you get, not just in terms of looking at, again, just the score. Look at how things changed in the organization when you made certain changes. You made certain changes in your contact center. Let's say you went to a different provider of software. You went to a different method of answering the phones. You went to you installed a new chat bot that was superior to the one you had before, and things got better. Showing the results of everything that you've done right down through the organization, all the way extending to market share, bottom line, all of those things that the money folks want to see. Show me the money is really where it's at, right?
Right.
If
Absolutely.
you want to prove to me that you're doing something, show me the money. And so if you can tell the story at that level, then you're going to convince people to make some good moves.
Do you think it differs from enterprise to mid-market to small business?
I
Or,
think
or is this just proportions of scale?
part of it's proportions of scale, but I think in a lot of cases, because small businesses are small, I'm closer to my bottom line producing stuff than an exec sitting at HPE or at Microsoft, or right. I can see it. I can see it happen. I can see it happen faster. Huge organizations are generally, not always, but generally slow to react because of the time it takes for something to percolate through the organization. So that's a question of having the right tools, listening to what's going on out there, looking at the right places to see the results of what we're doing. But I think there is a difference in scale as well, because you can have the same effects. It just might take longer, or you might have to go about it a little bit differently. Your approach might have to be a little more data geared, analytics geared in a bigger company, simply because people don't have the time to look at everything they need to look at. You're going to depend more on the analytics tools to tell you what's going on, what the changes look like, what the trends are, etc.
Right. So we're going to shift gears a bit for the final question that I have for you. It's about tools. And I think we can kind of make it also a little bit about enterprise compared to, medium to small business. So yes, it takes a long time for kind of changes to percolate through the organization, as you say, at an enterprise level. But we've found in many studies that we've done here at LiveVox that it's the enterprise folks that are kind of leading the way in technology adoption, especially things around artificial intelligence, leading the way in chatbot adoption, leading the way in conversational IVR, speech analytics, all those things. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and then I'll ask my next question, because that's actually a really good question, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
Okay. There's a few reasons why I think the enterprise side is adopting newer emerging technologies faster and using them pretty effectively. One of which is that I think an awful lot of people aren't really acquainted with how much data it takes to feed artificial intelligence. Okay, it's a huge amount of data. How many times have you gone to a website and you've had the pop up, I'm not a robot. Okay, fine. Here I have to, show me a traffic light.
Right.
That's a traffic light. That's a traffic light. That's a traffic light. How many years have we been doing that before we finally convinced the self-driving cars that that's a traffic light? Right? It takes a tremendous amount of data to let AI do its thing. And the more data you have, the more effective it is. So that's one reason, is that the size of the data pool that you have is going to be much larger in a big enterprise than it is in a smaller company. Second thing is budget. Okay, we're going to spend $14 million a year on tools. Am I going to do that if my company is 75 people or 100 people or 1,500 people? Probably not. I've got to have a lot of employees and a lot of money coming in the door to allow me to spend the money that it takes to get the most advanced tools? Can I learn how to adopt open source tools that might be available to me if I have some more technical skill in my company? Yeah. Are there ways to share the information and the data, publicly available data that might help me? Yeah. So the technology is one thing that's super important, especially now, because so much is going on with technology. And I just, previous to our discussion here, came off a session where I was talking about adoption of skills adoption and upskilling and reskilling for the digital age specifically, because the way we work has changed internally and the way we do business as customers has changed.
Absolutely.
I mean, e-commerce went up like 44% during the pandemic, right? During the first year.
Yeah, brick and mortar for sure.
So there's tons of reasons why there's a difference between them. It has little to do, I think, with attitude and more to do with money and the availability of data.
So it's a resource thing.
Yes.
I mean, I suspected as much, but I just always wonder if you'd think that being smaller would allow you to be more agile, but it does come down to the resources. So AI is the hot thing now and has been for the last couple of years. What about now? We're thinking about the metaverse. We're accustomed to having Alexa talk to us and make our grocery lists and turn our coffee pots on. What, if any, looking 5-10 years in the future, what, if any, role do you think any of those things will play in the service and support space? I mean, will there be a day when I talk to Alexa and say, Alexa, my Amazon package never arrived?
I think that day is very close.
You do?
I think that's going to happen. Oh, yes. I think that's within a year, you're going to be able to do that if you can't do it now. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is absolutely coming. I've already seen 2 years ago, I was giving a talk in San Francisco, and the CEO of the company that I was speaking with did a demonstration. And we were talking at the time about IT. This is in IT. And it was a big company, and he was using his own data as a demo, and he was using Alexa to talk to the internal systems of the IT service desk.
Oh, wow.
He said, how many high priority tickets do we have right now? Who are they assigned to? Asking those kinds of questions and getting immediate feedback, right, through Alexa.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely astounding. That stuff is, so it's there. It's a question of applying them. And again, some of it's a question of money and tooling on the back end to be able to handle that. I think the question that's more interesting and underlies that is, how are we going to use the data that we've accumulated? That's where AI really excels. AI and machine learning are really good at munging through tons and tons and tons of data. What about all the customer contacts we've had? We record all these calls. I was reading yesterday, a company that I do some business with gets 7 billion minutes of call recordings per year. 7 billion minutes a year.
Wow.
So what do you do with all that? Well, people can't listen to it, but AI can, and it can go through and pick out keywords, can give you key names. How many times did your competitor get mentioned? Was it in a positive regard or a negative regard? Wouldn't that be good to know for the entire company?
Yeah.
Right. Not just the customer folks, but for the sales folks, for the marketing folks. That'd be extremely good information to have. That's where the change is really going to happen. And I think that's having that data pool and being able to get at it is where AI is going to make a huge difference. And if Alexa's a way to get there, great.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that would be really cool. Convenient, right? So this has been great. You've given me a lot of food for thought. Where can we find you?
Where am I? I'm in South Carolina. You can find me on LinkedIn.
On the interwebs.
Okay. Roy Atkinson on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Roy Atkinson on Twitter. It's amazing how that happens. Either one of those is a good way to get hold of me. cliftonbutterfield.com. Clifton Butterfield is the name of the company. Head over to the website, check us out. There's a contact form there. And we have our 800 number on the website. Does anybody use 800 numbers anymore? I'm not sure, but it's there.
We have a lot of customers do.
Does anybody pay tolls anymore? There's no call tolls anymore, but there you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time on this Friday, Roy. It's been great chatting with you. And I hope you'll join us for the next one.
Thanks, Amanda. Nice to be here.